Diane Bosfeld and Abby Willard with us, and we're going to take some testimony in regards to the Working Lands Program and how, I guess we're going to hear how well that program has been utilized by people of all stripes around Vermont and rural Vermont in production of ag, forestry, the whole 9 yards. And the House added, because of financial need, the House added $2 million to the supplemental budget bill. And so this is just getting some information to support that request. And the request didn't come from the Ag Agency, but from advocates for 2+2 and the need that they demonstrated to the House Ag Committee, as well as the Commerce Committee in the House, as well as the Appropriations Committee in the House. So I don't know which one of you would like to lead off, Diane.
Sure.
And so we'll hear all about the Working Lands Program.
Thank you, Senator Starr, and thank you for inviting us in this morning. Yes, the agency did not request the funding, but it is nice to see the support for the Working Lands Program. I know that Abby is going to give you some great detail, but we're very pleased with the support in the Budget Adjustment Act, and we're also pleased with the support in the in our 23 budget that we haven't come in yet to talk to you folks about. But the governor's office has supported increasing our base grant funding in the Working Lands Program. It's been $594,000 for a few years now, increasing that up to an even $1 million in our base funding. So that's very helpful as well. And also very appreciative of last year, the funding that was appropriated to the agency to be spent over a number of years, but another I believe 3 million and another 2 million, but Abby can give you good details on all of those. But I will make the last statement that the other thing I wanted to do, Amy Mercier, our financial director, is on as well. She's going to make sure we keep all the numbers straight while we chat. But very pleased with the work, and the demand is there for Working Lands. So if Mr. Chairman, you're willing, I turn it over to Abby to give you much greater detail.
Well, I think I'd like to hear from Abby on the details. No, feel free to jump in and back and forth. Yeah, we're pretty liberal with our meetings. So, and I wanted to welcome Amy to the process as well. So, thank you, Abby, for being with us.
Of course, yeah. So Abby Willard, Agency of Agriculture, happy to join with you all this morning, and helpful to have our financial backups in both Amy and Diane. So what I thought that I could share this morning is around some of the basic demand for the Working Lands Program that occurred in FY22. I'll also note that
We lost your voice. No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. This is my terrible internet connection these days. I thought I could share a little bit about the Working Lands Program demand in FY22, and then encourage the committee to join the joint hearing in a few weeks where the Working Lands Impact Report will be shared. And the program manager, Lynn-Ellen Schmoller, will share lots of details about the program.
Yep.
In FY22, the demand for Working Lands was over 10.5 million, and the allocation in FY22 was 5.595. So our base allocation has historically, the last few years, been 595,000. There were two additional appropriations of 2 million and 3 million to make the allocation in FY22 5.595. Of that, 5.29 is available in grants. We removed some administrative support to administer additional grants from that pot. So 5.29 is what's available currently for FY22. 10.5 million was what we received in application and pre-application demand. 2.1 million has already of that 5.2 been allocated, and that went to service providers, to meat, slaughter and processing, standard business applications.
We lost you again, Abby.
Infrastructure. So if you can't hear me, just do something so I know. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So what remains to be allocated is in the supply chain and market level infrastructure. We've received pre-applications, and there was over 7.37 million in requests in those two categories, and we received 50 applications. What has occurred is, though 6.26 million in applications have been invited back. So from the pre-application, 6.26 million were invited back to submit full applications and provide additional materials. So March 14th is the full application deadline for the supply chain market level infrastructure. And then the end of May, we'll notify applicants of their final decision, and then projects will start probably in June, beginning of the summer. So again, the fact that the 2 million in budget adjustment could be added to the 3.2 million that hasn't yet been awarded. So that would provide, let's say, if the 2 million was successful to make it through budget adjustment, 5.2 million that could be awarded towards those larger supply chain and market level infrastructure awards, of which we've invited over 6 million in applications back. I can also share that with those applications that have been invited back, there's an additional information that's being requested from those applicants. So we ask that they provide additional financial information, so their balance sheets and profit and loss reports, as well as if their large infrastructure project requires any permits, we ask for them to share their process and their status in those permit procurement. And then if they need additional grant assistance or resources, we're directing them to those grants over the coming months as they're working on their additional application. What we envision.
Abby, were you gonna tell us what types of apps you've received, or what projects that, some of these larger ones might be going to do later on? And if you are, just continue, but if not, it might be helpful to know, like, if it's going for slaughtering facilities or fixing slaughter facilities up, because we keep hearing a lot about meat processing and shortage of the time waiting time to get in and all those things. But it's up to you how you do it. If that's going to come in on later, fine.
Yeah, I think I can provide some of that detail, but I also think this is where the program manager, Lynellen Schmoller, would be really helpful for the committee to hear from. I think I shared in testimony last week that of those larger supply chain market level infrastructure applications, of which there were 50, and then 40 were invited back. 6 of them are in the meat sector. So 6 of them were for either support of new processing and meat slaughter facilities, renovations, as well as there was an application from Vermont Technical College for creation of the training center to do workforce development. So there, of the 6.2 that were invited back, there's a fair amount that's related to the meat sector, but there's also a few million in forest sector applications, as well as dairy and diversified and other value-added ag applications in that mix of 40 applications invited back. But we could talk, and again, Lynn Ellen, who's reviewed and read every one of those applications, I think could give you, greater detail. We could also share that list with you if you'd be interested. I think my intent was to just demonstrate the overarching demand of the program, and that, if the Budget Adjustment Act were successful, that there's at least 6 million in projects invited back to submit full applications that we'd review in March that could be utilized to award some of the 5.2 million that could be available for the program at this stage.
I think we've lost our chair. At least he's disappeared off my screen.
Yeah, no, mine too. Thank you. Okay, well, let's just keep going, I guess. We'll hope he comes back.
Can I ask a question of Abby, Senator Pearson?
Yeah, of course.
So, Abby, it sounds like you're $1 million short. You have 6.2 million asked for, 5.2 million available. And I'm wondering, on what basis do you sort of say, yes, come back and fill out the full thing? And what would separate somebody from being kind of eligible and not eligible, if you will?
Yeah, so Senator Calmer, it's a great question. So I think what we can say is that we're not exactly sure the high quality applications that will come in out of the 6.2 million that were invited back. And so that's where we engage them in some technical assistance as applicants to remind them of the type of information that we're looking for in the application. So that includes additional financial information. We need them to include a business plan that's recent, so no older than 3 years old. We need them to share in their business plan what their marketing analysis and project management team would be. So ensuring that to do a large infrastructure project that they're working with a consultancy team and they have kind of like a business advisor that they are receiving viability support from. And so there will be a review process of those applications that were invited back. So we asked 6.2 million. We expect that we'll see that many come back. After that March 14th application deadline, we have a consultant that's going to work with us to review those projects to determine the viability of each of those applications, and would likely give some sort of a review that the application is ready for implementation and the project is a high value for investment, or has a few components that are still needed. Maybe it's a permit, maybe their financials need a little bit of attention. And so they would then end up in sort of a maybe category. And then there may be some applications that we would determine are not fully viable at this stage and not ready for investment. So we won't know of the 6.2 million applications invited back, how many are sort of ready for investment until we have conducted that assessment sometime in March. But we've had so many high quality applications that we're expecting that there'll be many.
Thanks. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris?
Thank you. It's a good problem to have an oversubscription, but when people get pushed into the maybe column and they need more work, does that ever come with technical assistance, or do we refer them to, our technical assistance folks? Can you just help us understand that? My attitude is it should be competitive, but in many cases, we're asking businesses or potential businesses to play in spaces that we kind of need in a larger community sense, and so I'm kind of hopeful that we also help, but I'd be curious what happens.
Yeah. Senator Pearson, I would say one of the greatest contributions that our program teams provide would be in an application and in a grantee stewardship role. So every applicant that applies to Working Lands, whether they're invited back for a full application or they're denied because it's either a one application stage or after they've submitted a full application, they're not deemed viable, receives very detailed application feedback from our team, as well as connection to other resources. So whether it's we feel that a different scaled grant would be appropriate, level of technical or business assistance that we recommend that they participate in, or just general feedback about their application strength, that they could have been clearer about their project, they included ineligible expenses, we didn't feel that it was an eligible activity under the project, bless you. And so that level of technical assistance is a big part of what our team spends time on. So that's actually what they're doing right now with the other 4 categories that did receive awards and that included 2.1 million of investment, is sending back the detailed feedback to all those applicants that weren't awarded to let them know how to improve or strengthen the application.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
And Abby, how soon from that March 14th deadline would the board be handing out, come to completion, so they'd be handing out the money?
We're estimating in May.
So it would be good to have this so they could go to construction sometime in May or June, or the work.
Correct.
And so July 1 would really slow that down. If we put it in the 23 budget, it would really slow things down for the spring.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah,
great point,
that's-
Senator.
Good to know.
Yeah, I think our plan is obviously to obligate all the funds in this fiscal year, but I also believe that it's our intent to ensure that the businesses have as much of the field season to do construction and renovation as possible. So that's the timeline of making final project decisions in May so that they can begin project construction and renovations, or equipment purchasing in June.
Yep. Other questions for Abby? I don't know, Abby, my computer system caught your disease that yours has. I was
good.
gone for a minute or two. Anything else for Diane? Very good. Well, we should know by the end of the week, the first part of early next week, how we make out. It was not a question whether we were going to do it or not. Some members just wanted some updates on how the money was going to be used and what it was going to, be used for, and if we had a lot of requests. And so I've got all that. Alan Keeler also sent me long list of same projects you're talking about, but I guess she's a member of the board and was telling me how the board she was the one that I guess was pushing the fact, but the board was supporting the issue, and that you folks we're not involved in that request, and I want to make sure that's clear so that you folks don't get in any discussion with your leadership. So if there isn't anything else, thanks a lot for your time this morning, and we'll move on. So thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, appreciate your interest.
So committee, we have Rural Vermont coming in at 11 o'clock. I don't know. I think that, well, maybe we ought to talk a little bit more about this. Does the committee feel comfortable in me supporting this down the hall when we talk about it later today?
The extra
Jay,
2
I'm
million
sure
you're talking?
Senator Kitchell will ask, well, how'd your committee do? Are they supportive of this? And so if I don't see any hands, I'll, say we're all set with it, think that it's money well spent and recommend that we put that in approach.
What's the number
Yes.
again, Bobby? 2 million?
2, yeah.
Yeah,
And-
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and Carolyn, the Health Ag Committee was in on this over there, like I think I said, along with the Commerce Committee. So they're supportive of it, and I think our committee on our side will be fine once we get those numbers to them, which I'll do this afternoon. So why don't we, Linda, Caroline and them are coming in just at noon or 11?
That's correct.
Yeah. Maybe if they wind up, do you guys have stuff you have to do now? Because we could take a break until, well, it's only 30 minutes, so we may as well leave our schedule the way it is. So we'll take a short break now, unless there's something that you may want to bring up.
I'm good.
Mr. Chair, I just a quick thought, we were hearing about the vacancy at UVM at Extension or the coming vacancy. And then as I was trying to digest what we were listening to from Abby Corse and others yesterday about, what seemed sort of like vague after months of work, but really their specific was to invest more in Extension. And I sort of, in a way, I wish there was more concrete stuff coming out of that plan. But then I've started to think about all the testimony we've had over the years about the technical assistance that folks at Extension are vital to. And I remember, well, the Heather Darby and I can't remember her colleague came in and told us about the support they've given to people to get back to grass-fed beef and grazing and some of those things. And it's occurring to me that a lot of the work coming out of Extension is actually sort of where the ag innovation and therefore the sustainability technical support is coming from.
Yeah.
And so it just had never quite clicked in that way in my mind until last night. And so I guess I'd like to see if we have talked about sending the message to UVM that we mean to have, we're not comfortable with an 18-month gap in that vital role at Extension.
That's unreal.
It's just mind-boggling, right? I mean, we've just heard from the Cannabis Control Board that it's going to stand up an entire industry in a year, and these people can't fill the vacancy in a year and a half. I mean, it really staggers the mind. Anyway, however we're going to deal with that, I'd like us to think about also finding ways to prioritize actually even more than just rapidly filling vacancies at Extension, but maybe even looking to beef it up, because I think that that nexus between supporting the ag economy and helping increase the knowledge base and the sustainability practices is really, really important and shouldn't be shortchanged while we spend millions helping people get electric cars. You know what I mean? That's where it
Come on now, be careful, be careful.
look, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't wait to afford an electric car. I'm not there yet, and it's important, but it's not, you know, so is, in fact, I would argue it is more important that we help, you know, increase sustainable practices in ag. So anyway, I'm not, this is a random thought, but as we talk to UVM or figure out how we're putting pressure on them around extension, just on that vacancy, I hope we will also talk about and try to come up with funding and strategies to, in fact, expand what they're able to offer, maybe look at some of their geographic footprint of, you know, I'm sure Heather and others will say they try to go everywhere, but, you know, there used to be, I don't know if it still exists, but there used to be kind of an outpost down in Windham County, right? Am I making that up?
I think there used to be an extension office in every county.
In
Yeah.
every county. And
Right, there was.
You know, so much of this stuff is back to the future. Like all we need that old fashioned approach actually
Right.
was much more sustainable. And so
Well,
anyway, it's a random ramble here, Mr. Chair, but I think that it might be worth us thinking about that as one of the primary strategies around sustainability in agriculture, and obviously a well-trusted partner in the everything from the dairy to the diversified world in Vermont ag.
well, last year, yes. We didn't have those folks in, I don't believe, and
No,
usually in prior years, we've always had the extension service in, and the president, we did have the president in, but you know, we have tons of new young farmers,
Yeah.
young people that are well educated, but maybe not educated in the agricultural field, that want to get into the agricultural field, and they need people like from the extension service to help them along. And you know, we've heard, like Abby was saying, Vern Gruviner, you know, he's over, I think he's over on the other side of the mountain from where Abby is. And you know, they have no dairy guy there at all. Then John Roberts was testifying the other day. It's going to take them 1.5 years to get an extension agent, and you know, it just doesn't, it isn't right. I mean, why would it take 1.5 years to hire an extension agent? If it does, there's certainly something wrong with that process. So
And
would you like to get Kamala in and the agent and see what the heck's going on?
sure.
yeah, I'm not sure who the right people are, but I'd like us to
You
think
get-
about that. And, you know,
get
I
the boss in.
well, the boss is useful. It can also be useful to have the workers, but Senator Parent wasn't with us, but I remember so distinctly the testimony I think we were at the dairy, what was that festival up at Jay
Oh, yeah.
in the good days? And we heard Mateo and his presentation, and I just, what sticks out to me was the photo of the general store, you know, before and after, and you know, there was no direct money from there, but just the activity in the region that allowed the store owner, you know, an ancillary impact of that economy. And you know, what if we're successful in beefing up sustainable practices in Vermont ag and keeping the ag economy going, it will be, in my opinion, because we create out of extension and as a sort of North Star for the state, a healthy soil sort of regenerative kind of approach. And we establish ourselves as the leaders in this, and it will create jobs and it will bring young farmers. And it is our, in my opinion, our only shot at holding open our open lands. Because as we know, dairy, the owners are aging out, and it is not obvious that the next generation will take that over. And so if extension is critical to that, we're going to invest all manner of money in all sorts of questionably viable businesses. And, I mean, we really are. Let's face it.
Yeah, but that's a
And-
known fact that
That's
it
right.
really makes a difference. We aren't guessing, we've got the facts to substantiate the value of having that. And that's a lot different than a lot of places we're spending money.
And listen, if we're going to send $10 million to restaurant owners, and I love going to restaurants, but shame on us if we're not sending that and more right to agriculture. And one of the ways to do that is through extension. So anyway, enough for me, but that was just sort of some of my thinking that was gelling last night. And I think is not controversial. The governor, is not going to be opposed to us making these kinds of investments, I don't think.
No.
And I'm not sure that there will be another committee that will package it in the way that we might be able to. So.
No, if it's gonna go, it's gonna have to come from us, if it's gonna make it. Anything else that any of you'd like to bring up while we're still open?
No,
Well, Linda, you want to take us off Zoom, and we'll be back on at 11